So I'm coming around the Hanger Lane roundabout, and it's just a very busy roundabout on the A406 North Circular that rings central London, and it's actually the end cap of the busiest mile of roadway in all of Great Britain, done by a recent report. And a lot of people try to avoid this roundabout because of the traffic, but it used to be that people avoided this roundabout for another reason. Back in the 50s and 60s, that was the turnaround for a jukebox race out of the Ace Cafe. They would put a coin in the jukebox and they'd hop on their bike, they'd go out in the A406 to Hanger Lane, pinned on the throttle, zip around the roundabout and pin it back and try to be back before the song was over. Now, the Ace Cafe is pretty far from Hanger Lane, but that's a pretty ballsy race, and maybe that guy's running for the jukebox race in his little Ford. The 406 back then was not this 6-lane motorway, it was that road over there. And the Ace Cafe was just a roadside truck stop. It was just a way-by where motorists of the day could stop and get a bite to eat. If you ever watch any of the old videos of the old rockers and mods and the Ace Cafe footage, you'll recognize that arched train bridge there. There's the Ace Cafe there. I'm gonna do a ride-by. But coming under this arched bridge was a landmark for the bikers back then. That sounds cool going through there. Now the Ace Cafe is kind of a nostalgia stop for people in England and London specifically. It's a lot different than it was back when the rockers were here, and it's kind of a revival from what it used to be. But it's still a good stop. They have ride-outs and weekend events. They have a London to Brighton ride, and they have a lot of get-togethers. Classic car nights, classic bike nights. And it's not just limited to the British. It's inclusive of lots of different makes, manufacturers, styles. I'm sure that's a business decision, but it is a destination for a lot of motorists or motorheads, motor enthusiasts. Before it was exclusively a cafe, there was a garage here and kind of a muffler and tire center. Before that, it was just the way-by for the single or double lane 406. There's no maintenance or sales of any kind. It's just kind of a cafe and gift shop building on the nostalgia, but I always do like popping in when I'm in the neighborhood. The draw of the Ace Cafe is nostalgia. It was opened in 1938, and soon after it was bombed, and then they built this skeleton of this structure, and it was owned by the original owner until the 80s, when it kind of went derelict and was sold to a muffler and tire shop, and then didn't reopen in this iteration until 2001. So it's a typical rebirth, renaissance, nostalgia exercise by the current owner, but it is a nice place to come. It's really a spot that I like to visit when I have an opportunity. So the food's pretty basic. It's kind of dirty truck stop burger food. I had some greasy onion rings and a milkshake. Milkshake is a typical British milkshake, which is essentially milk that's been shaken. If there's any ice cream in it, there's no evidence left after they're done doing what they do to it. But you know, you don't come here for the food. If you order an egg sandwich, you better ask for the bread to be toasted, or you're getting room temperature white bread that's kind of flopping around an overcooked egg. I'm going to take a ride down the old 406 and see what it was like to ride along these roads back in the day. If my bike will start. There we go. Apparently they got some reparation money to rebuild after the war, after it was bombed in '38. So this would have been the old road. The term cafe racer came from these cafes. The newspapers at the time built up this rivalry between the rockers and the mods and all the violence and the gangs, and I don't know how much of it was true, but I think of the rockers that I've met, I think I would have much rather hung out with the rockers than any of the Hells Angels that I've come across. You know, you gotta imagine all these guys coming back from a war or growing up during a war. If you can get your motorcycle at 16 years old and ride a full-size motorcycle, you're asking for trouble. Surprised there wasn't more trouble. And that's it, we're done. There's some artwork. But man, imagine riding 100 miles an hour down this tiny road. You can't ride 100 miles an hour now in England because you'll get nabbed by a camera. And that'll be an expensive ticket and a lot of points on your license. I'm pretty sure my bike couldn't go 100 miles an hour anyway. My biggest hang-up with going to the Ace Cafe for the gatherings and the ride-outs is more than once I've shown up and no one else was there. It was almost like there wasn't an event scheduled. The other times I've gone is I've felt very much like an outsider. I haven't felt included in the events. There's kind of a arm's length distance that you feel, and I don't really know how to kind of break into that crowd. And the folks that I've met have all been kind of standing at the margins and all kind of looking at each other, looking at each other's bikes, and really, I think they've also been at the margins. So I don't really know what the core experience is meant to be, because I haven't found it yet. Cool bike. And there we go, we're off. So that was the old A406, and now I'm back into this industrial state, and the new 406 with the multi-lane road heads up the Hanger Lane. So there's really no way to recreate the old Hanger Lane jukebox race, but you can see there's these kind of factory industrial estates, and I'm pretty sure these factories date back to that time, because the Ace would have catered to factory workers, lorry drivers, and those early rockers probably would have worked in those factories. But there's nothing romantic about this area. There's nothing that would draw you here. You don't come here for anything other than that Ace Cafe, and I wonder if that's enough. Alright, so this would be the way back. The song would be, you'd know the song really well. The song would be in your head, and you'd be flat out here, gunning it back to the Ace Cafe, hoping that those ribs along that record, bouncing along that needle, hadn't come to the end. Maybe there's a gal you're trying to impress, or a rival. And hopefully there wouldn't be someone driving slow in front of you, or you'd definitely lose the race. You know, a lot of people say when you're riding fast on their motorcycle that you have a death wish. I don't think that's true. I think exhilaration that you feel when you're riding fast has no connection whatsoever to wanting to die. It's wanting to live. It's wanting to experience as much as you can. There we are back at the Ace. I'm 3 songs in now. Going to the Ace Cafe is kind of like going to church. You do it out of a sense of obligation with a hope that there'll be some salvation. Generally I leave feeling a bit empty, but it doesn't stop me from returning on the odd Sunday. And I do like going under that train arch.
If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.